Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined on this fine Monday evening, Monday afternoon back home by Harrison Fagan of SB Nation. Harrison, you and I were talking before we went live about the news that dropped about Inside the NBA being licensed out to ESPN because nobody can really trust ESPN to make a good NBA show. But here's the part of it that I find really interesting. And we're going to talk today about D'Angelo Russell coming off of the bench, the 5-game winning streak that the Lakers are on since they made that move, how JJ Redick executed that plan, and what this all means for the chances of trading or whether or not the Lakers are going to look as hard to trade D'Angelo Russell. A really fun show ahead of us. But yeah, this news drops, Harrison. And remember when it looked like Inside the NBA was going to be defunct and it was just going to end after this season? And many people
were like sort of in what it seems like it was ultimately a leverage play. They're like, no, we're just going to do Inside Sports and we'll have these guys come on TNT with no sports rights to like talk about sports once a week.
So, but remember when all that was going down, how many people were like, God, no, come on, they can't go away. No, how could they possibly? No way. We can't have an NBA without Inside the NBA. What are we going to do without this show?
I was one of them.
Well, okay, we disagree, but it was funny though. Like when we get this news, it was covered like crazy. How many people got the group text that Inside the NBA was going to be licensed out to ESPN, but I didn't see nearly the same number of people like celebrating the fact that it's back in the same way the number of people were like eulogizing it in the first place. I did you notice that? Like, I find that really interesting.
I think maybe our timelines are a little different, and you've just curated yours more towards the type of negativity that you thrive off of, where like I try to look for positive people and positive things. I saw a lot of people happy about it, but like the thing that I actually thought was interesting about it was there's a certain sort of subset of the Twitterati, like yourself included, that loves to complain about how Inside the NBA is not like an X's and O's breakdown show. It's not informative, all that stuff. It's like, which, to some degree I agree with, like it's certainly not a show that you're going to watch or you're going to be like, oh man, I feel like I understand the sport of basketball and how it's played in 2024 so much better after watching that. But that's also not why I watch it. Like, it's just funny to listen to those guys razz each other and sort of incidentally talk about the games. Like, it's the funniest studio show of all time, I think. And I would have missed the clips of them afterwards, if they were not going to be around anymore. But I do think that it's funny that a lot of the people that were like, oh, get those guys out of here, they don't know ball, they don't even watch the games, whatever, none of them were like, oh man, this is continuing on ESPN, because I think that says a lot about the state of ESPN's pre, post, and halftime coverage, where people are, even the people who hate Inside are still like, yeah, this is still probably this is objectively an upgrade.
Oh, for sure is. It 1 zillion % is. And like the thing is, ESPN, like, because there's talent there at ESPN, right? I really like I'm biased because he's become kind of a friend, but like I think Windhorst is like one of the funniest people like in the NBA sphere. I think Malika is a really good host. Richard Jefferson has been, I think, one of the better polls in recent times in terms of a studio analyst, and he gets out there, and I think he's really good in games.
I actually enjoy him more on the games. I think he has a very good, like, if he has the right sort of play-by-play guy, I think that he like adds a little bit of humor to the broadcast in sort of like a new age Bill Walton-y way.
Yeah, I think he would have been really funny with like Jeff Van Gundy, right? Where like Jeff would be so angry all the time, and I feel like RJ at some point would just be like, "Are you ever happy?"
Was making fun of him. Yeah.
How many short jokes do you think he would have made? broadcast.
A few at least, I would imagine. But yeah, like I agree with you. They have talent over there. It's just for so long, sort of the format over there has been just such a mess where they don't let the, I mean, this has been covered to death, but like they don't let them talk or make any real points. And so often the segment is just like, hey, Perk, who on this team is a clown fraud that's choker that their entire legacy is on the line tonight?
Everybody.
Yeah. And he just comes in and he's like, if Kevin Durant doesn't win this regular season game,
he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame.
A bus driver.
Yeah. I'm with you. Like, it is funny. Like all of these things that I'm noticing, and I guess we're doing analysis of analysis here, but it was so funny to see the show eulogized to the extent that it was. And then now it's coming back, and I didn't see anywhere near the same amount of people going like, because it was on my timeline. And by the way, I would have missed it too. Like, I think it is a objectively really funny show. I just don't think it's very good basketball stuff that I'm looking for. I would have loved a sports show, Inside Sports or whatever it would have been. Like, I would have loved that show. That would be really funny to hear Chuck talk about football with roughly the same amount of knowledge about the NFL as he has about the NBA. Like, I'd watch that. I think he's a really entertaining dude. I think his interactions with Ernie and with Kenny and with Shaq are really, really funny stuff. They have incredible producing there. They have great ideas on how to cover or how to be entertaining after the obligatory 5 minutes that they have to spend on the NBA. Like it's a great show, and I would have really missed it too. And
I'm just saying, ESPN doesn't throw Shaq through a Christmas tree while racing to the X's and O's board. You know, it's like,
well, how much control do you think ESPN's going to have over this thing?
Nothing. I think that's the thing.
It's just
I mean, I'm sure they have some control. They're paying for it to be put on, but like, I think, there is a little bit of a buffer there where it's like, no, we are paying. It's sort of like the Pat McAfee thing. How much freedom does he have to fire things off? Like about as much as he did at YouTube. So, I think that seems to be the comp that people are making, where it's going to be, Turner is still making their decisions about how to put on a good show. And to be honest, like, I don't think ESPN should be allowed to meddle very much in that. And I think they would be smart not to.
Based on the shows that they've made.
You would think that they would have the self-awareness to be like, we're paying all this money to produce that, to just basically borrow these guys' brand name recognition, because we understand that we have been terrible at this for 20 years. And so, you know what? People seem to like these guys. So we're just, you know what? You guys,
it sounded for a second like you said, we're going to borrow these guys' brain damage. And you know what? I thought you were on track. I thought you were good to go. But no, I'm with you though. Like I think ESPN is making the right call here. I think, keeping that show. Now, I don't know how over the moon Adam Silver is going to be about this.
I was about to make that joke to you. Like, I don't like, can you imagine? Adam Silver's got to be pissed, right?
He's like, we're finally done with, no, we're not. Oh, okay. And this comes after, by the way, remember the rumors that like Adam Silver was going to put his foot down about the type of content that ESPN is going to be making, or I guess in this case, licensing about the NBA.
Now they're like, look, we can't do anything. We just licensed it to these guys,
But I don't know. Like, I'm really kind of curious how Adam Silver handles all of this stuff too, because like he wasn't. There's a reason that like the NBA kind of sort of iced Turner out of the negotiations. Like, Turner literally sued them because they felt like they didn't
I think
get
it was also
legit opportunity.
Likely had a lot to do with their CEO just basically going on stage somewhere, and yet another brilliant David Zaslav move was just like, we don't need the NBA. We can survive without it. And then the NBA is like, oh, you can? All right.
Famously, the pros live sports, not good for business.
No, actually, cable bundles famously do not need them, I think, is the thing that we've determined. Not an important factor.
Yeah. No, I'm really happy I am legitimately happy that it's back, and I'm really kind of curious how this is going to go. I'm really hoping that they shove Stephen A. Smith into a locker, and we get to watch that all live together.
It would be funny if they just had a recurring bit where they're like, Stephen A is going to come on net, and then they never cut to him.
Like the Matt Damon thing. Yeah. The Matt
but
A.
he's
Damon
in the waiting room the whole time. They're like, sorry, no, we like he's actually there, and they're like, cut for time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
He has his social team ready to do his like normal entrances, right? The
yeah,
way overproduced entrances where they make it look like he's actually playing in the game. Yeah. It would be great if they did.
I'm excited for if there is like actual crossover stuff. Like I want to get Shams on Inside the NBA, like where they're going to him courtside at like ahead of some game, and like he's like trying to like report, sort of whatever scoops he has that day, and like Shaq is like, Shams, what are your sources say about Chuck's breath? Is it sinky?
Yeah, I hope Shams has like the comedic chops for that, because if they do unleash those guys on Shams, I don't know how that's gonna go.
I don't know that he's ready for that. Like,
well, sources. I was told. I was told. Well, back to you, Ernie. All right, let's go ahead and dive on into the Lakers stuff here, because it was a great weekend for the Lakers. They are currently riding a 5-game winning streak. D'Angelo Russell looks like he might win Sixth Man of the Year. Maybe. I don't know. I'm really rooting for it. I'm really rooting for D'Lo to get that award. JJ Redick, pulled off this move. I've reported on it a ton for Clutch Points about like some of the things that went into this move and how long that process dates back. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. Quick reminder, now that the show is fully underway, please do hit that subscribe button. Please do hit that like button. If you guys are watching on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge, where you can find the show and all of that good stuff. But yeah, let's talk about this 5-game winning streak, and we'll start macro and then we'll move into the D'Lo stuff afterward. The Lakers started 3-0, and I and many people were thinking, look at these guys. And then they promptly went on an immediate downslope after Pete and I jinxed the ever living shit out of them on the episode that he and I did
road
together.
Trip, I believe, after the LFR pod, or a 1-3 road
trip. 1 and 3. Yeah, 1 and 3 when we had the LFR lounge crossover.
The LFR dump, like not bump. It's
so the Lakers though now are riding a 5-game winning streak, albeit not against the best opponents. The opposition is not at its best, and they're kind of broken too. But the Lakers have taken advantage of them. Net rating still doesn't look that great, needs to improve a little bit. But like, how much do you believe in this 5-game winning streak, in this identity that they have now, where, Anthony Davis talked about it after the game against San Antonio, where it's like, people go into the starting lineup, people come out of the starting lineup, people get hurt. It doesn't matter. Next man up. We just step up and do whatever needs to be done to win.
Yeah, I mean, I think to some degree, this is just sort of, this is the level that this team is at if they have LeBron and AD healthy. I mean, those are the two guys that are really going to set the lineup back, like if they have to miss any time. But I do think that with the D'Lo off the bench thing, they have found something where their lineups are just balanced in a way that they were not before, where they're not really playing any, like there's no abomination lineup. Like, oh man, like the every year I feel like there's one. It's like, it's like the Taurean Prince at the 3 backups, or like the Wood Hayes front court disaster from the beginning of last year, where Darvin's like, I'll try the 2 big thing, and then everybody, Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood, and it's like, no, that's the one combo we don't want. And
yeah.
And so there's always I feel like every season, and every team has this, where it's like there's one lineup that the fan base just
the hold your breath lineup.
And yeah, that's a good way to describe it. And this year, I mean, really, that's just any lineup with Gabe Vincent in it. But provided without excising him from the rotation entirely, I do feel like the Lakers have found a good amount of lineups where they're at least capable on both ends. They make sense. They're able to score at an NBA level, defend it somewhat close to an NBA level. There's no embarrassing lineups where they're just like hemorrhaging points anymore, or at least it doesn't feel like it to me. And so I do think that I think this is sort of just the team when they have the stars ready to go. Obviously, I don't think that they're going to go undefeated the whole rest of the season. So if that's what you mean by is this 5-game winning streak team the team, then no. But Pete had a great stat today on Blue Sky and on Twitter on about how this is basically how this team has been when they've had sort of the continuity and they've had their guys healthy. It's they've been about a 700 team. And so are they that over the course of this year? I don't know, but they're probably at least above 500, well above 500, maybe above 600. And so I do think that this is a pretty good sort of indicator of where the team is at.
Here's the stat that you're talking about from Pete on Blue Sky, and hilariously, his tweet before it, was Anthony Davis staring up with that eye that he's nursing. But here's the stat here, and Anthony Davis in it, and so Pete
his eyes welling up because of how beautiful the stat is.
Yeah. Those tears probably not good for how raw that eye feels, but.
Yeah.
22-23, the Lakers go 19-8 with a 704 winning percentage with roughly the same core post the trade deadline. So after they trade for Russell Westbrook, they close out the season 19-8. And in 2023-24, the Lakers go 23-10, a 697 winning percentage once Rui starts, and they play roughly the same core as the year before. And then so far in 2024-2025, the Lakers start out 9-4, a 692 winning percentage, while playing roughly the same core as the previous two seasons. I don't think that they're a 700 win team, to be completely honest. Yeah. But I do. Look, Pete came on here and made the case that they could be 5 wins better over the previous year, with the only change being playing your better players or playing your best players, which I kind of get. I still don't know that a coaching change is ever going to be
basketball games. Yeah.
What's that? Yeah. Normally, well, and that's the thing though, is that that's the argument, right? Is that the previous coach was so bad that a coaching change and bringing in a coach who, again, checks notes, plays his best players, that would be enough to win 5 additional games. And I'm still hesitant to go there because a 5-game swing is a really big swing statistically. That's a giant step forward, and it's hard to assign just that one change to just that. Now, maybe that one change keeps them a little higher in the standings, and then they eventually do tweak the roster in ways that they didn't last year because they didn't think that they could get over the hump because of how far down the standings they were at the trade deadline. There's a bunch of other factors here at play, but what I will say though is that and also their net rating right now, which is one of the better kind of sweeping indicators of how good a team is that net rating. It doesn't indicate that they're a 700 win team either. So we'll see kind of where this all kind of
I feel like
settles.
They've been sort of below their level in that for the last couple of years though, which I think has something to do with true. They don't shoot and make a ton of threes, and
they don't blow teams out.
Yeah, so I do think that has something to do with that, where it's they're not as high variance to where, the net rating's ballooning because they have all these 20-point blowout games. They're just not a good enough offense to regularly blow teams out like that.
What I will say, even if I'm a little skeptical about the roughly 700 winning percentage, what I will say is that this is a team that very clearly believes in what they're trying to accomplish, and in their coach, and in each other, and in their culture, right? You think about everything this team has been through, especially the core of Anthony Davis and LeBron James. where and I guess Austin to a certain extent too, because he
Yeah, I was
was
gonna say,
there
who
with,
else other than those two guys have been through all that much of anything together?
yeah. But like, yeah,
Um,
I guess Austin was there also with Russ, and I think that's the biggest, like,
yeah,
that was the biggest test of everybody's trust in each other, and I think it's something that the organization is still reeling from. But
and in seriousness, like D'Lo, Vando, Rui, like they've been around for like since that Western Conference Finals run as well. So like there is
yeah,
some real continuity there where they've been through some wars and some battles and some long seasons.
well, and with the adversity of playing for a bad coach that everybody knows is a bad coach, like I'm reaching the point here where we might have to start implementing the Byron rule with Darvin. But in this case, the reason I'm bringing him up is like these guys, LeBron, AD, Austin, D'Lo, Vando, Rui, Max, like these guys, I think that experience can either break you as a core or it can bring you together, right? With very, very little in between. And when I watched, because I went there to the game on Friday, and I was really paying close attention as best I could because I was on the other side of the court. But I was paying really close attention to the bench. And I remember what that bench looked like last year, right? I
Yeah.
remember what huddles
I
looked
was
like.
watching for the same thing when I was at the Lakers Philly game.
Yeah, and you watch these guys now, and it's very clear that that experience brought them together far more so than it ever like separated or eroded any trust in each other. And look, D'Angelo Russell is a former number 2 overall pick. He is made an all-star team. He has taken teams plural or been a part of taking teams plural to the playoffs and then deep into those playoffs in the case of the Western Conference Finals year.
I was going to say,
Right.
yeah, only deep into the playoffs once, I think.
Yeah. But like he did all that as a starter, right? That's the point that Raj likes to make. And the fact that like he is now I didn't get a chance, like they JJ was running a little late before the game, and they didn't take as many questions as I was hoping. I wanted to ask JJ, like, you said before the season that you talked to D'Angelo Russell more than just about any other player on this team. I still don't. I probably wouldn't have told him that I don't buy it, but
I think you're a liar. But do you care to correct that?
But I would love to know
Can
if one of the.
Can I see the text exchange? Can I see the chain? Can I see some of the ones with the other players? Can we compare, contrast?
Yeah, can you actually print out your entire text history and let me know like what?
Yeah,
and I'll run the stats for you. But I would love to know if one of the things that he talked to D'Lo over the summer is him coming off of the bench,
that was
because
sort of what I took from that quote, was that
okay.
he was almost, again, like he's been very deferential to D'Lo, or he was going into camp. He has not been deferential to him this season when he started, smashing up the entire team bench after a bad shot. But over the course of the summer, when he was in the offseason and sort of training camp and all of that stuff, when he was talking about how much he was talking to D'Lo, when he was talking about how great D'Lo is, like that felt like, I'm buttering you up. I'm showing you that I believe in you. But, I talked to you all summer because I'm like, hey, there's a lot of different ways that this season can go. I'm just a really prepared guy. I like to be prepared for every eventuality. And so like, let's talk about a couple different things that may happen. Hey, if we get off to a strong start, that's great. But if we don't, then maybe I'll want to experiment with having you come off of the bench and see if that can give us a little bit of extra scoring punch, and sort of setting that move up in advance so that it's not like, you are bad on defense, you're sitting down. Also, please keep playing hard.
So I guess I'll quickly retell the story again, but remember at the very onset of the Lakers' search for a head coach, and I'm going to put search in air quotes there, right? But in the Lakers' search for a head coach, the beginning of the process, I was told that the Lakers were hoping to be wowed by JJ Redick. And that's when I first reported that the Lakers had zeroed in on JJ Redick as their top candidate. And then that same exact verbiage was used again by, I think it was Shams. And so when I heard that, and again, it was people that I really, really trust. who told me that was the case. And when I heard that, like, all right, if you're going into an interview process hoping to be wowed by somebody who, as quickly as he did, developed the following in podcasting, you're going to be wowed, right? Like he's very, very charismatic. He's very, very good at this stuff. And so I started like asking around about like, all right, what's it going to look like when or if JJ Redick is the head coach? And the first thing I kept on hearing was how, like, he wants to get LeBron on the move a little bit more. He wants to play through AD a little bit more. But I would say
off-season bingo items every year, by the way.
Yeah.
But
he's actually executed those things.
Yeah. But he's actually done it. So I go, your point is taken.
But the next thing that I kept on hearing about was how great this is going to be for Austin. Like everybody I spoke to who like we're talking about like valets, even like anybody, like if you dropped off a DoorDash to the Lakers facility,
Anthony just revealed his sources. The Lakers valets.
No, I'm saying
jobs.
any person who like was even closely like
according
even
to car parking sources close to the organization's building.
Everybody was saying how great this is going to be for Austin. Austin is going to shine in our in JJ's system. Austin, aside from AD and LeBron, is the guy that JJ is the most looking forward to coaching. Like that is the guy who this season really kind of hinges on too, by the way. Like the amount of pressure that was inherently applied to Austin was also noteworthy. But so I hear that and I keep like my response just keeps on being like, okay, what does that mean for D'Lo? Because if Austin is going to have the ball in his hands a ton, and then the point of the offense is to either get LeBron on the move or play through Anthony Davis, there is not a ton of excess creativity that D'Lo can tap into while he's out on the court with those four guys. And then if they start Rui Hachimura, that's another offense forward guy who's going to be the safety valve in the event that the sets that the Lakers run don't create the advantage that they're hoping for. So where like is D'Lo just going to be a corner shooter? And if so, he's going to hate it. He's like,
and also is that even the best use of him? I would say no. No, it's like that's not a good use. Like he is more, whatever you think of D'Lo, he's more skilled than that. He is not just a corner shooter and like a guy that should just be, just hanging out, spacing the floor, and that's all he does throughout the course of the game.
And he also said it on the podcast, Harrison. Like on his podcast, he said, like, I'm a rhythm basketball player. I'm a rhythm hooper. Like I
turns out playing that way your whole life makes you better at shooting that way. It's
Well, so and then like the season starts and famously Redick goes on the low post and says that he's going to start the team that went 28-3 or whatever it was last year.
I'm sorry to cut you off here. Can I just say how smarmy that seems in retrospect when he went away from that lineup after 5 games?
8. Yeah, but
8. Okay.
But this is the thing, Harrison. I was
like that idiot Darvin didn't play this line. Oh, by the way, also D'Lo can't defend. This is not working.
Yes, but so like the season starts and that starting group isn't overwhelming, and the bench unit is an absolute disaster. D'Lo doesn't look himself.
Overwhelmingly bad. Like it was overwhelming. Yeah, it was overwhelming, not the other teams. It was overwhelming the fans with how terrible they were.
Like anytime a bench player came into the team, you would see people pull out brown paper bags. It's like,
oh, all right, I guess here we go. Gabe Max Hayes minutes. Let's get through this.
So, yeah, so I was, I was kind of told this was a thing to look for early on in the season. If like JJ wanted to give those guys a legitimate shot at starting the season together and getting to see what they were capable of together, but also importantly, Harrison, taking note of what them playing together in a starting unit would do for the rest of the rotation, right? Mm-hmm. And I do think, like, I
It
think
gives
we've
you film
seen,
of a lot of different things potentially going wrong with both units, where you can say you can sell the solution a little bit easier, where it's like, look, like D'Lo, it's not about you. Like, these guys cannot score. Like, they need
yeah.
someone to put the ball in the basket.
Well, and
And
also,
like
like,
Austin
also
is going to
he,
be better Austin's going to be better set up for success playing off LeBron and AD. You don't need those guys as much. You're a stronger scorer, you
yeah.
know.
Well, also, like, importantly here, because you're selling D'Lo on this, right? Like,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time talking to assistant coaches and stuff around the league, and I kept on asking, like, how would you sell this? How would you go about, like, having this conversation with somebody who is a lifetime starter, like, not just the NBA, but the entirety of his life, he's been a starter. He's been the best
Well, yeah,
basketball player
generally
on.
guys who are lifetime NBA starters were starting before then too.
Yeah, right. But I'm saying, like these are habits that have been formed
Yeah.
since, like, the first dribble that this dude took, right? So, like, I was asking around, like, how would you sell this? And they would say, like, I would go to D'Lo and I would say what this can do for his game and for his market, because,
Yes.
and this is something that I just talked about on the article that I wrote today for Clutch Points, right? Is the last two transaction windows or free agency opportunities for D'Lo, he took what he considered a pay cut 2 years ago on that 1+1 deal. And then on the back end of literally setting a record for the best shooting season that any Laker has ever had, he wound up having to opt into that player option, something that normally doesn't happen unless like an out and out disaster takes place. You get hurt, or you're terrible. It's a terrible fit, all those things. No, he played well in the regular season, played poorly in the postseason. And then he winds up having to opt into his deal. And, when I was asking, executives and stuff, like, well, what do you think this means for his market after this year? And they're like, he might get the mid-level, or he'll get like a chunk of the mid-level to be higher paid than, or better paid than a vet min. But there was a lot of concern about what this guy's market was going to look like. And, in the last 5, after, like, as the
I
Lakers
still
have
think
been
he'd
on
at
this,
least get the mini mid level. Like maybe not the
yeah,
full, but like he'd at least get the mini mid level.
yeah, I think so too. But I in asking around since the Lakers have been on this run, though, and saying what people think, like, they're saying, yeah, he's a lot more intriguing a player if he's willing to accept this kind of role or be open to any role that helps the Lakers win. And the thing to keep in mind here with D'Lo too is, we know what, like, he does not have a poker face.
Yeah.
Right? We know what it looks like when D'Lo is checked out. We know what it looks like if he isn't giving it his all. And the impact numbers that we're talking about here would indicate that he's giving his all. Right. And so, like, he's actually, I think, bought into this, which I think is extraordinary on his part. And I think it's going to be really good for him in the market this summer.
Yeah, and I mean, the point that I want to add is that I don't think that this is all a JJ, is so good at selling this stuff thing. Although I do think that probably has a lot to do with it. Russell seems to have a better relationship with JJ than he did with Darvin Ham, which low bar. But he clearly seemed to hold like the Dennis Schroeder stuff against Darvin to like a kind of weird degree, to be honest. To still be bringing it up like the next season, and it was just clear like those two guys just like did not vibe or with each other, and so JJ, but clearly communicated this better than Darvin did at that point. But I also think that part of this is JJ has the advantage of the circumstances that you're talking about, where not only has the market for 2 straight years told you what it thinks of you, and that you're not going to get as much money out there as you had available from the Lakers in both cases, but two, there's not a lot of teams with cap space this summer. And so I was talking to somebody, just a friend of mine, over the weekend about like why they noticed the same thing you did. It's like, why does D'Lo seem to be taking this so much better this year? And it's like, well, I think the answer is because his agent has probably gone to him and explained the situation and said, look, the market is not there for you as a starter right now. Like, that's just, I'm sorry, it's not happening. And so, if you have to come off the bench and you can show that you can be part of a winner as a reserve role, that is now the way that we get you the most possible money, because it's not going to come as a starter. And there's not that many teams with cap space this summer. And the other thing is too, the Lakers have his bird rights. And so if you want more
Yes.
money than the mid-level, then like your best odds of getting that are from buying into a Lakers role and having them quote unquote overpay to keep you and keep you under contract there. So I do think that it's a situation where like his hand has been forced to a degree. And now like we've seen all kinds of guys not recognize that reality and still not buy into roles. So this is not to not give D'Lo any credit. Like he deserves credit for still, sort of pushing down his ego and being willing to accept this change. But I do think that there's like sort of a variety of like context factors that have made this easier.
Yeah, 100%. But I think we do need to hammer home like how I think it's cool. Like, I think it's really cool that D'Lo has accepted this and is thriving in the way that he has. Because again,
it's a lower tier version of like like the old cliche about like the hero's journey that like every star had until like like the mid 2000s, where it was like every star doesn't know how to win until they like learn to sacrifice for their teammates, or like whatever everybody had the MJ narrative put on them, and it's like they just have the star, they just have to learn the triangle and then they're good to go. And this is like a lower end version of that. Of D'Lo is realizing like he can be like a strong starting caliber player, but he's not going to be a guy that wins at that level necessarily in the playoffs. And so can he become a super overqualified bench guy that is just like dynamite against other teams' 6-man reserves and stuff and really win his team a bunch of games that way?
Yeah. The impact numbers are staggering. This season, the Lakers are 8.2 points better per 100 possessions when D'Lo is on the court. And they're 12.1 points per 100 worse when he's on the bench. That's on the season as a whole. And then in this 5-game winning streak, they are 19.9 points better per 100 possessions when he's been on the court. And then 5.4 points per 100 worse when he's off of the court. Like,
yeah, I wasn't going to call out the typo live on air, but
I know. I saw it as I was reading it.
That's why I always used to tell you, read your stuff out loud and you'll have less typos.
But so, like you don't have those kinds of plus minus numbers, even in a small sample, Harrison.
Yeah.
You like,
and even like, going against reserves.
But that's the thing. Here's why this. I think it's worthwhile to explain why this is the perfect role for D'Angelo Russell. One, he is still an elite, I think, offensive point guard.
Yeah,
he has a great handle on the ball. He understands the rhythm of the sport. He understands like who needs to touch when, how to get to what spot you need to get to in order to get the offense running. All of that stuff. He's very, very good at that. So he's good at that against starters. Against bench units, he's godlike, like, and so you have and they
can't
factor.
Take advantage of him on the other end as much either.
That's the second part of this, right? Is that like on
like they
on
have
defense,
their Gabe Vincent out there trying to attack D'Angelo Russell, and it's like, okay, I mean, good luck. You're probably going to get by him, but like you're probably not good enough to capitalize on that enough consistently to make him like hemorrhage points.
Well, and then you look at the types of players that he's playing with out there in that second unit. It's like the Max Christie's of the world. He plays some with like Cam Reddish out there. He'll play, with Christian Coloco and guys like that. Dalton, his offensive rating so far this season with Dalton Connect, and they've played 100+ minutes together. It's like 132.3 points per 100 possessions that they're scoring together. But like, he's not, you can't take advantage of him defensively the way that starting units do. And he is taking full advantage of bench defenses. And then on top of it, and I think this is the biggest factor here, why he has these crazy plus minuses, or one of the biggest factors, is if he doesn't have it, JJ has just been pulling him, right? He's had games where he's only played 20 minutes. And if you get yanked on nights that you don't have it, that's going to help your plus minus because you're not going to stay in there to hurt your plus minus.
That's a good point.
So like they've basically found this.
So is JJ using his podcast media brain to get D'Angelo Russell the 6th Man of the Year award? He's like, look, D'Lo, he's like, I know how these people think. Like
Yeah.
I can manipulate their stupid little VORP numbers that is all they look at because they aren't going to watch you play. And if I can just get your net rating up to a certain point, you're going to win 6 man of the year. I'm going to prove it to you.
Yeah. Well, I think he has a real shot at 6 man. If he stays in this thing,
I do too. He's scoring. He's coming off the bench. You know, it's a good story that writers can get behind. You know,
yeah.
I mean, the thing that's going to work against him is he's like, you know, he's not the greatest with media, so it's like I don't know that like everybody's going to be like bending over backwards to like vote for him, which I'm not saying that's like right. I'm just saying that is often how these awards votes go. And so like that's sort of a mitigating factor, but I do think that he has a chance to make a case ironclad enough that he's just going to get it regardless of if he's like sort of terse sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and look, like I've made this point a few times too. I'm fine with him being terse about this. I'm fine with him being a little frustrated over this. It shows that like there's an amount of pride still left that like he wants to be a starter. He wants to have a bigger role in this team's success. And like I do think there is so much value in having a 16 whatever $1 million player slotted at the exact perfect role.
Yeah.
It is so effing valuable to have a high salary player willing to accept a lesser role, thrive in that role, and then have that spurn success in the way that it has spurred the Lakers' success so far. And that 5-0, like that's why I asked AD what I did, right? And he kind of, you know, he touched on it at the very beginning where he said like it rewards that good process and it gives you more confidence to stick with that process. Like this is honestly best case scenario how this has played out so far. We did get a question here that I'm gonna do the trick that some of these TV shows do where they're like, oh, and we'll go to the crowd for a live question that we definitely weren't going to address this subject matter anyway.
Yeah.
But this question that we have here,
Anthony, why are you so handsome? Okay, you put that in. That's not written.
What are you talking about? At Anthony Irwin's burner? Like, why would I make it that obvious? Alex Chavez writes, Anthony, do you still think they can afford to trade D'Lo with how important he's been as the 6 man and running that second unit? And that's where this gets interesting, right? Like, what do you think about that one?
I do, but it raises the bar for what you have to be getting back. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I expect, teams are going to be fighting over D'Angelo Russell now in a trade, or like, I don't think that this changes how, Chicago views him or something like that, or like one of these like prospective trade suitor teams that they're going to be linked to a million times over the next couple of months. But I do think that it changes the calculus for the Lakers on like, okay, we have to attach a pick to this guy, like, as the main sort of crux of salary ballast. The team's not taking him in because they value D'Lo. They're taking him on for the pick and that's to get an upgrade. And so, but you need more of an upgrade than maybe you were getting before, where it's just like say he had taken this move really terribly, then it's like, okay, he's probably leaving at the end of the year anyway. This is basically like a human trade exception. He's not doing much for us. He's not really helping the team. Like, we just need someone who can contribute at some level that's higher than D'Lo, which is not very high. But given that he's contributing at a high level, I think that changes it, where, you really need to be addressing sort of one of your major weaknesses. Like, I would say probably the wing is like the biggest area of wing defense is probably the biggest area where the Lakers need to address some things. And so I think that you have to be sort of substantially addressing a real flaw in your roster to move off of him, and not just because you're like, oh, we're gonna like trade him for like Dorian Finney-Smith.
Yeah, it basically means that Gabe has to be like, if you're going to trade D'Lo and not get back somebody who can run that second unit, it basically means Gabe has to be good enough to do that. And maybe
that's the end of this episode.
Yeah, right. Well, I think it means that the Lakers are going to try harder to include Gabe in those trades than before, you know, where
And you would think it wouldn't be that much harder other than from like just D'Lo makes more money, so it makes it easier for him to be like sort of the main crux of like a,
yeah.
uneven deal. But Gabe, like it's again, it's not like either any of these teams are taking these guys because the rebuilding teams that are about to tank, they're not taking these guys because they want them. They're taking them because they're getting picks attached. So you wouldn't think like how Gabe is playing is like probably fairly immaterial.
And honestly, like Gabe, I think probably has a little bit better reputation around the league than D'Lo does.
I guess the downside is he does have another year left on.
Yeah,
his
he
deal
has the extra year on his
so
contract. So
maybe that does change the calculus.
But like I'm looking at, you know, D'Lo's trade market and what the Lakers would be looking to accomplish in trading him. And before it was like they would be looking to accomplish contract matching. But now, like that, and I don't think these impact numbers are going anywhere anytime soon. Like he's too talented a player and he's playing in too perfect a role, I think, now for us to like a couple months from now look at what he's done on a larger sample size and be like, oof, man, what a terrible take that was when I said this is the perfect role for him. So if we look at, you know, when we get to January, when we get to February, and you're starting to have those conversations in a more real way, like the Lakers are really going to have to take. I was always skeptical. Like it was the take that the consensus take that I probably disagreed with the most were the people saying like the Lakers couldn't trade D'Angelo Russell because they really needed D'Angelo Russell's production when he was a starter. They were saying that. And I was like, I don't know. I feel like you could probably do okay finding a starter who could provide those kinds of numbers or have somebody step into a role, and maybe it's a slight step back, but the aggregate improvement is such by bringing in that wing or getting a better backup center, whatever it is, that you can make up for D'Lo not being in the starting unit anymore. Now in this role, I do like, this is the first time that I'm questioning, man, should they mess with this? You know, and maybe he gets sick of this. Maybe that honeymoon period, wears off, and you know, you get to the trade deadline, and it's like, okay, that was a cool story for a little bit. D'Lo isn't happy doing that still. We got to move on, and maybe at that point, you know, Gabe is further away from the 14-month absence that he's had roughly. That, you know, he's better equipped to handle that role than he was at the beginning of the season. But I do think that now with the way that he's playing, you have to factor it in.
Has started to like kind of ball out, and he's ready to sort of take on that role from Gabe.
Who's that?
Jalen Hood-Schifino.
Who? They have a. Huh. I'm trying to think. Who is that guy?
He mostly plays for the South Bay Lakers.
Oh yeah. Oh no, wait. I'm thinking of Quincy Olivari. The sad part is like that's probably
or
like,
Raj is like probably listening to this at work, just like balled up fists at his desk. Like, why?
So,
it wasn't even a topic of conversation.
so funny story about that. The way that StreamYard like kind of take people behind the curtain, when I send out the link to guests to come onto the show, they now have access to the green room here on StreamYard from then on. Like they are always like, they could, if they click on that link.
Anthony, I feel like there's no way that is the default setting, that you can't change that setting.
It was something I selected. It was something that I chose on purpose because it better helps you like organize your shows, and like you can find your shows a little bit easier when you want to download clips and stuff like that. So there's like a benefit to it, but like the downside is that now that like all of those guests could like at any point just trample into the studio.
Surprise cameos.
Could you just imagine if Raj like remember that, because he's the only guest who knows that? So could you imagine if Raj just tramples on here? He's Jalen Hood-Schifino.
He had a really strong second half of his G League season last year.
Oh man. for those curious too, like as far as does it do anything to D'Lo's trade market? I'm told not really.
If anything, you would think it would sort of improve it, but probably
Yeah,
doesn't
but like
affect it
it's
very
such a
much at
small
all.
sample
Yeah.
at this point that I don't think
Yeah.
it's right now. It's going to do anything to it. And then, um, as far as like his free agency market, I think it slightly improves it. I was talking with somebody though who made a good point in saying that when you're a starter, your baseline is a lot higher than when you're a bench player. So like for every amount of money that
Yeah.
D'Lo maybe now has access to, you have to grade that relative to a bench player. Whereas before there was like a certain, you're probably guaranteed at least 12 million or so as a
Yeah.
starter.
Well, but that's the thing is the market was sort of going to tell him that he probably wasn't a starter with whatever team he
Yeah.
signed with this offseason anyway,
Yeah.
because it's
And
like,
now he
I
gets a
mean,
head
like,
start.
are the Nets like who are tanking, like, are they going to give him a big bag to bring him home and like have him start? And, they're like, oh, this is a fun story for our fans. Like maybe, but if they aren't, then there's not a lot of other options, And so
Yeah.
there's sort of a lot of guys are sort of gambling on like, do I think I'm going to be the one that the Nets are going to pay? Because if not, I mean, there's not a lot of cap space out there this summer.
Yeah. Does Detroit have cap space? Maybe San Antonio does. And Brooklyn. I
I
think
think
that's
both
about
of
it
them have used up quite a bit of it because they're like taking
to
on
get to
bad
the
money for picks.
yeah. Yeah. But yeah, he gets this head start on that role. And if he accepts it and thrives in it as he has, then, I do think that improves his trade market. And that's not just me, right? Like that was something that I wrote in that piece was that like, other teams are a lot more interested in D'Angelo Russell now that he's willing to accept this than they were, a couple of weeks ago. So we'll see what that looks like. But I do want to like kind of finish on how cool it is to watch D'Lo, who has this immature label out there, has earned it to a certain extent too. Don't get me wrong. But like he has that label on him. There's that narrative about him. And like I've always been hesitant to take that extra step and be like, he doesn't care about the team, or he's like, too selfish to care about the team. I just think he's a little eccentric. He's a very smart guy, I think,
And
too.
he's just athletically limited in meaningful
Yeah.
ways. It's like it's not selfish to be a bad defender if you're just not built to be a good defender.
Yeah.
It's like he tries, like he's been trying this year. There's just certain things like he's just not going to be very good at.
Yeah. And it's interesting. He's listed at 6'3". I always thought he was taller than that, and then
I think he used to be listed 6'4". I don't know if they're like moving him down to like try and
he's so old that he's shrinking.
they're
We're
like, no,
so old that the players...
how is he supposed to stay in front of this guy? He's only 6'1".
They're tempering expectations.
It's like,
I
wait,
could have swore he was like
7 inches
6'5"
taller
when he
than
was
Gabe
drafted.
Vincent. It looks like. How is he? How are these guys listed the same height?
What, like, if you were to try to categorize like how real the Lakers are, we've seen them a 3-game win streak, we've seen a 5-game win streak, we've seen a 1-3 or 1-4 road trip. We've seen the two ends of the spectrum here so far with the Lakers. Where do you think they finally sit?
I think the real version of the Lakers is the one that wins every single game, and the one that struggled, that's the fake version where they just were doing the wrong things. But no, I think the Lakers are. I think at this point they've shown us that they should be, at minimum in contention for like the 6th seed, and like avoiding. Like I think the goal should be avoiding the play-in this year. And if you can sneak in and you can sneak up the West and you can get home court advantage, that's great. But I think, again, all of this is like injury dependent and stuff. Like if either of the stars get hurt, they're going to be fighting for their lives. And like these goals sort of go out the window. But if provided those two guys stay relatively healthy, I think it's totally reasonable to just say like, hey, you guys should be out of the play-in this year. Given sort of the track record of like over those years of when they play that core group, like they've shown us that they are at least that level of a regular season team that should be able to compete for a 5th or 6th seed, if not like a 4th seed, if a lot of things break right.
Yeah, I probably have them in that same kind of range there too.
Like they're
Well,
not gonna get the best record overall. Like I just don't. I think the West is too
I think it'd
talented
be
for that.
dumb to try,
Yeah.
frankly, because that means you're playing LeBron
You're going to have
and
your night. You
AD
want to be able to have your
Harden.
nights where LeBron sits out because even though he said he wants to play all 82, like, color me skeptical. Like, I think there will be some games where it's like, they're just like, hey, it's not worth you playing tonight. Like, let's just shut it down. Even if he stays relatively healthy at going at like at age 40 next month. And, if Anthony Davis gets hurt or if there's, some nicks and knacks, like he's already sat out one game because he had a plantar fasciitis thing. And, now, and then he came right back. He may be in and out of the lineup sometimes with that, even best case scenario. And so, like, I just don't think that they're going to be able to go full bore for like the number 1 seed. But I do think that, like, trying to compete and like stay within range of that 4th seed at the very least, to where if a couple things break right the last couple weeks of the season, maybe you can sneak your way in there. Like, I think that's about where they should be setting the pace car for themselves.
I think an even more important version of that same question.
And bottom is like definitely avoid the play-in. Like, there's no reason you guys should be in the play-in again. Like, just don't be embarrassing for a month and a half at midseason like last year, and you will avoid the play-in. Okay, it's not that hard. I mean, maybe it is hard, but the West is deep. But they should be able to do that.
But I think a more important version of that same question is like, do you think the Lakers or this version of the Lakers will be good enough to, stay in the hunt consistently enough to convince Rob Pelinka to do stuff at the deadline? And
I think the version of the Lakers that gets I hate to be this much of a cynic after we've had like such a positive show, but my mindset is always like, if I'm trying to put myself in Rob Pelinka's brain, it's like, where do I have the most job security? And like, it's like, if team is like a 5 or a 6 seed and I trade a pick that's in like 2029, 2030, 2031, whatever, that's the kind of thing that could get me in trouble down the line if this team is like loses in the first round or loses in the second round. Yeah. But it's like, if the team is good enough to be like at the top of the West, and it's like, people are going to blame me for not making a move if if they don't go as far as their record says that they should go, then that's when I think you start to see him push in the chips a little bit. And so, I think they have to play well enough that like going into the deadline, like they're going to sort of force Rob's hand, where it's like, hey, this very clearly flawed roster is like the 4th seed in the West. So do you want to be serious, or like is a home gate playoff revenue for 1 round like good enough for you?
Do you think they can do that though?
I think they can. I don't know that they will, but I think they can. I think they're capable of it.
Yeah, I think so too. I like they're 9-4 right now.
But like they're going to need health for sure. And
Vando hasn't played
for all of this. Yeah.
I
think they can. I think they're capable of it.
Max has played like 2 good games,
Well, he
Gabe
just
has
needs
played
to lock
1.
in again. JJ sent him to the bench and Max leaned forward in the chair. He's like, all right. He's like, my biggest hater's back. I gotta show you.
Chair?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they'll be good enough to force Rob's hand. The other thing too, and I like, this needs to be brought up a lot more than I think it's been brought up so far this season. Rob's contract, unless they've given him a secret extension,
I absolutely believe it. I just assume they have already. Like, I just,
but unless they've given Rob this a secret extension, Rob's contract runs out at the end of next season, not this season, but the next one, which means if he doesn't, play the right tunes or make the right moves, so, throughout this year, he could arrive at going into next season as a lame duck candidate. And I don't think Jeannie would want to put him in that position. Like, you talk about convincing, she would have to be really convinced to do that.
Yeah.
But I do think though that like, if the Lakers are, like you're talking about, a 4 or a 5 seed, or especially a 4 seed where they have home court, and they arrive at the trade deadline and it comes and it goes, and the Lakers don't do anything to address any parts of this very clearly flawed roster, or like they don't even do enough to like open up a roster spot so that Quincy Olivari can like finish out this season with the main roster. Like
Well, they
that's
don't have
where
to do that till like the final day of the season. So theoretically,
yeah. Well, I think they have to
have
do it
fun.
by March. I think he has to be on an NBA contract just like everybody else, in March to be on the playoff roster.
No, there's some date about you have to be cut by then, but he's eligible. He would be eligible to join like remember when the Lakers signed Tristan Thompson on the last day of the season?
Oh yeah,
and
you're
we had
right.
tax penalties. It's like as long as you're a free agent by that point, you're allowed to like. So the Lakers, he's not a free agent. Obviously, he's on he's a two-way contract with them, but they could just promote him to I think the regular roster at any time.
Yeah.
Because all that is like that's
like
basically like a contract extension upgrade, is my understanding. That's not like we're tearing up your two-way contract and giving you this other contract.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I believe that is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge podcast. Jeffrey Santos did ask about that. What I do think is that like at the deadline, they'll make an imbalanced trade that opens up a spot for Olivari.
Or maybe they won't. I mean, look, we've seen a lot of guys light it up in the G League at times. And like, they don't always call them up. They don't always think that it's translatable to what they're going to do. The reality is, I know nobody wants to hear this. And like, I hope that Quincy's great. I want him to be good. But there are guys who it's like, they average 30 points a game or whatever in the G League. But then it's like you get into an NBA rotation and it's like, okay, well, you're not going to be like the star of the show here. So what do you do? And they just may not have a vision for that right now on what that is that he provides them with, at the scale his role would be with the parent team.
Well, he can shoot, which I think
cut Bronny.
I don't think that's going to happen.
LeBron revenge series, LeBron revenge against his own team, run to the finals.
No, the rumor that I'm really looking forward to is like Team X is demanding Bronny in a trade.
And look, I mean, to some degree, it's like, hey, they could cut JHS. Like, it's not like they're going to keep him anyway. Like in his contract, but like
cutting players doesn't do anything for you because they're up against the second
roster spot.
It does, but you can't really, because the Lakers are like, Jeannie has made it very, very clear.
Yeah.
That you are to stay under the second apron, period.
I do wonder if they did it on the last day of the season or something like that, if they have enough. But I'm not a cat. This is bad radio now because I don't know.
Well, no, but like if you do that, like if you go above the second apron on the last day of the season, that now counts because it's how you finish the season. So that will then mean that you have been, and that starts the counter on how many years you're above the second apron and all that.
Yeah, you're right.
So,
you're right.
Cutting, like, because I got a question. I got a question up here earlier, right in the comment section, like, why can't they just cut so and so for Olivari? And it's like, because it just doesn't quite work that way. They need to. They literally need to do work to open up a roster spot, and we'll see if they're able to do that. So, Harrison, this has been a lot of fun. Is there any? I never asked you this. Is there anything you want to plug?
Just check out SBNation.com. That's the main thing. We have Noah Dalzell has been breaking news around our new WNBA writer, full-time professional women's basketball writer, has been breaking news around she broke when the Celtics were going to the White House this weekend. She broke, did not break when the Lakers were visiting for the in-season tournament title, but I suppose that's like a future scoop. And she also broke that Teresa Weatherspoon is going to be returning to coaching with Unrivaled and, some other stuff. So, if you're interested in Unrivaled, which is going to be the WNBA offseason league, like check out SBNation.com/WNBA. And we're going to have like plenty of coverage on that throughout the offseason. Yep. And then, obviously, you guys all know Silver Screen and Roll, your favorite, like check out Team Site Network, SBNation.com, all of it.
All right. That is going to do it though. See, we have a game tomorrow, which means Raj and I will be on right after that. And then I still have so many of those questions left over from Sunday. So I'll go ahead and handle, unless there's news to talk about, I'll handle the mailbag. We'll do a second mailbag episode on Wednesday. And then Thursday they play again, and that'll take us through the remainder of the week. So until then, and until the next time you guys hear from us, I'm Anthony Irwin. That was Harrison Fagan. This has been the Lakers Lounge. Please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that like button. Please tell your friends that you love the show. Tell your enemies that you hate it. and we will talk to you guys mañana. Here's Avery.